Hi everybody, thank you all so much for being here. My name is Dan, I'll be your host this evening. Welcome to Bali Stories. This is Paradiso's monthly talks series where we host speakers from around and beyond the island. The gentleman who I'm privileged to be sitting next to, Odeck Ariawan, is the first person everyone recommended to me when I asked around to see who could talk intelligently about this election that just passed. He is neither professor nor journalist nor politician, and perhaps thankfully for that last one, but he's a follower of the history and current events of Indonesia, reading almost everything that there is to read. He's got a lot of interesting things to tell us. So, one further thing before we begin is that we kind of came into this assuming that some people would come to this talk knowing a lot about the past history of Indonesia, especially the recent history, its history as a republic, and some people would know very little. So we're going to kind of begin, I think, with a general gloss over the recent history, over the since independence and up to the Reformation and such. We're going to go through that rather quickly, but we want to invite you. We're going to have, of course, we're going to have time for questions at the very end. But we want to invite you to, if you feel the need to interrupt us, if there's something that we've assumed that you know, but you don't, or if there's something you'd like to go into more depth about, please give us a hand. We'll try to acquiesce to that. Of course, we'll have probably at least half an hour and maybe 40 minutes at the end for questions as well, because the questions I've come up with are probably not as interesting as the ones we're going to have. So, without further ado, how are you? You got a microphone over there, yeah? Is it on?
Yeah, I think it's on.
Can you hear him okay? Good. Thank you for joining us today. Like I said, let's get started. Let's just jump in right away. Could you give us a general sort of rundown of the recent history of Indonesia, especially since it's become a republic, as you understand it? Just to sort of set up the current moment that we've got here, see how do we get to where we are right now, so that we can start in earnest.
Okay. Thank you for being here. He generously introduced me. But I also want to say something about myself a little bit. I'm a Balinese, and my parents are Balinese, and I'm living in ubud since we're all back from the in 1975. It's before all of this electricity here. And so I witnessed all the changes in ubud. But my family has always been involved in some kind of activism in politics and sort of, since my grandparents are also part of the decision-making process on community ubud. And also my father is involved in politics in Jakarta. But I myself is not an academic, and I'm the same as you, is observing what's really going on, and my sources of information are similar to you. So if you have something to say more about what it is that I mean, and question more about what you think. So that's a little bit about myself. But in terms of history, so Indonesia is considered a very young democracy. We have on and off adopting democracy, but the real democracy that we have after reform in 1999 is only about 20 years old. So this is our fourth election, direct elections, or executive and legislative, and it still is an experiment. Now, all of this, what's really going on, it has a context historically on politics and democracy in Indonesia. So I just want to have a background on why Indonesia is what Indonesia. So Dutch came here in the 15th centuries, and before that, Indonesia is kingdoms and various different type of Hindus, Buddhist kingdoms. In 7th centuries, there is a large kingdom forming in south of Sumatra. It's called Sriwijaya. That's the biggest kingdom on that time in Asia. And most of the country from Southeast Asia and India also learning Buddhism in South Sumatra. It was written all over the places, including in Angkor, this kingdom. On 12th centuries, there was a Majapahit kingdom. This is the second kingdom that sort of unite Indonesia and some part of Southeast Asia. That's what they know so far between 12th centuries and 15th centuries. And 15th centuries, there are a lot more trades going on. If you're familiar with the geography of Indonesia, and we are located in between China and India, so there's the two biggest culture influencing also Indonesian culture. So we are sort of in the middle in between of two previous cultural influencing these countries. But it's also there are traders from Arab that also been trading for way before the 15th centuries. And back then it started, the biggest Muslim influence is coming from China. Yes, so this is a lot of people don't know about this, but it's actually the massive spread of Muslim is actually from China. That's why Indonesian Muslim on their mosques they have this Chinese drum. And on that time there is an expedition in 1449 by the Chinese admiral. He's a eunuch, but he's Muslim. And he also visited Java and had some talk with the kingdom in Java. And on that time, religion is not like what we used to see now, which is differentiating people. But on that time, even the wife of the king probably had different religion in the king. Like some is in different Hindus believe, and the others is some different Buddhist belief. And there is many sects on that time. So my point about that is that Indonesia is not only familiar with differences of religions since the time, but there are many sects of Buddhism and Hinduism. It's also, when Muslim came also, it's received as one of the belief. So Muslim that came to Indonesia is not through war, through conflicts, because it's just one of the belief that's coming in.
Did you say it came in mostly through trade or economic reasons, or what was?
Well, just like the belief of Hinduism, Hinduism is that people want to have their own identity and belief. So Muslim is one of the solutions usually adopted by poor people and marginalized people. So on that time, on the feudal time, there are great differences in equality. So Muslim is spread very quickly because it's very egalitarian religions. So just like any other religions that already exist, Muslim was to Indonesia in the first centuries. So then colonialism, well, the trade with Europe started coming in. And one of the reason why European want to decide economy is also Christianity. The idea of making uncivilized people becoming civilized. That's the idea also. So therefore missionaries is also coming in as part of the missions and also other missionaries. And when a lot of Indonesian believe or other outsider believe that the Gaza has been colonized in Indonesia for 350 years, and it's maybe yes and no, it's not all the time it's being colonized. Like for example, the war against the Dutch in Bali is started in 1906. So it's just about 100 years ago. So it's not 350 years ago. On that time, Bali is not very much interest from the Dutch because Bali is very small and the topography is very, so it's not good to conquer Bali because it's not a flat area that you can plant rubber or any commodities. So mostly Java, where it's most populated, and also the area that in Maluku Islands where they produce naturally
spices, nutmegs, and cloves, and mace and such.
Yeah. So that's the reason why the Dutch came. So until I don't know if you're familiar with colonialism, that is actually structured in such a way that people are segregated. The feudals in Indonesia will have a special treatment, a special privilege. And of course the Dutch is the top, and then the elites of the feudal will be the second layers, and also the Chinese and the Arabic is also different, have a certain privilege. And then the rest are the slaves. So because of that, then the elites of the feudals will get better educations, and the Chinese and the Arabic have better education. So therefore, there is a lot of resentments toward the elites and the feudals, and the feudals have a lot of lands and control. And so a lot of them is actually at the beginning, at the end of the 19th century, was sent to Europe to study, to the elites. So they're probably like only 1 or 2% of Indonesian populations. And that's also had to be able to conquer an area, they have to also do divide and conquer system. So one elite is favorited and then can control the place and then will be in sand. Other elites that fighting against the Dutch will be sent to Madagascar or to South Africa, to even to Papua, just to be exiled. So there are elites that is not being favored by the Dutch. So, but a lot of elites starting to study at the end of 19th centuries to Europe. So they are actually, because of their success of their educations, and after the World War I, which is after 1913, and they had this awakening in 1928 that if they fight against the Dutch of colonialization only by their regions, they're not going to be able to succeed. So 20th of May 1928, which is this 20th of May, is 111 years after they call National Awakening Day, which is most of the educated of Indonesian Europeans start realizing the identity of Indonesia. And becoming Indonesia is very important. To unite with each other becoming important, so you don't easily colonize. So this 20th of May is very historical time for Indonesia, especially now.
Was there a particular event on that day that happened, or was it just? When you say there was a national awakening, you normally don't refer to a single day. So I wonder if there was a.
Yeah. So the youth of Indonesia on the time, of course, on that time was the one that literate and educated, swear that they have to have one country, which is Indonesia. They have to have one language, which is Indonesian language, and one country, one language, and one identity as an Indonesian. So they promised to have that to be able to be free from colonialization. So now, in 1942, as you know, Europe is, except Britain, was occupied by the Germany. So Indonesia in 1942 was occupied by Japan. it was occupied very fast because Indonesian people were coming to Japan, and the premise that Indonesia will get independent. And so in 3.5 years, Japan in Indonesia, Indonesia allowed to prepare their independence. So therefore, constitution, there is a committee being formed to prepare Indonesian independence. But Indonesia also prepared to fight against the European that is going to come, also like America. So then Japanese also trained Indonesian people to be able to fight. But in the middle of that, also because of the wartime situation, then the Japanese also forced people to work. So it wasn't very good time for a lot of Indonesian, common Indonesian people, because we are forced to work to, Japanese are very disciplined people, so we have to, we are not. So a lot of battles were experienced at the time, a lot of people died during work. So, but then a lot of the elites also very happy because they had the opportunity to prepare the Indonesian constitution. So Indonesia proclaimed its independence in 1945. But that's when the time when the Dutch were, the Japanese also lost the war against the American. When the bomb was hit, then on 17th of August, after the 5 days after the second bomb was hitting Nagasaki, then Indonesian students proclaimed independence on 17th August of 1945. Now, then the next 5 years, the Dutch will come and try to come and to take over the country again. So, so there was a war going on afterward for 5 years until 1949, when the Dutch recognized Indonesian independence as in 1949. I think it was 24th December 1949. But Indonesia had to pay everything, like about 3,000 gulden or something, or 3 billion gulden or something, which we don't know about this until recently because of the internet, that we know that we have to pay until 2002, all of this. After we colonized the Dutch, we apparently had to pay everything else instead.
And that's just shocking because nobody talks about that.
Exactly, because apparently the Indonesian government not allowed to reveal it because of the agreement. Yes, but then there is a Dutch scholars that made the research in Boston that putting this out, and so they're spreading out on the internet. That's the reason why I know about it, because there was a Dutch was celebrating something.
So I have a question over here.
These payments that only finished in 2002 were for what? For Dutch infrastructure and
yes, yes. Whatever Dutch that own anything in Indonesia, that's what we have to pay, because they also lost the war at the time against Germany, and but there's people that questioning about all of this, because if Indonesia part of the Dutch in 1949, that's mean all the people that died during that time is Indonesian citizens too, Dutch citizens too. But then that doesn't recognize them as a Dutch citizen.
You mean because Indonesia was considered a colony of the Dutch?
Exactly.
The Indonesians technically at the time were still Dutch citizens.
Because that's what, if that's the recognized Indonesia independent until 1949, that's mean all people that died during the war with the Dutch are Dutch citizen also. They're also supposed to receive some kind of compensation. But then during this Dutch recognition toward a hero, it's only 20,000 has being recognized as a hero. So there is a conflicting information about this. But Indonesia is not really disputing about this because we're not allowed to. But the thing is that I want to move forward from this.
Sure.
So Indonesia, I want you to imagine this, that most of Indonesian in 1950 or 1955 are illiterate, so we couldn't even read, majority of us. like 95% of us cannot read and write. Most of us probably don't speak Indonesian. Of course, poverty is very high, 80%. This is 1950s. But the first Indonesian election in 1955, it's considered one of the most respected elections. So this is Indonesia trying to adopt democracy during Sukarno time. Is they said one of the most free election in Indonesia because socialist and communist ideology is allowed to be part of the elected. Now we're not allowed to have socialists and communists. So it's not considered that free. Because by constitution we're not allowed to have common ideology of communism since 1967, by law. Now, you can imagine in 1955, women can vote, whoever in Indonesia can vote, in 1955. But we have like about 45 political parties. So you can imagine how people that illiterate have to vote based on the picture that being shown. So how difficult it is to run election with 80 or 90% of the people are not educated or even cannot read. That's happened in 1955. The one that win on the time is nationalists, communists, and number 3 is the religious party. So it's not a religious party that we know, but it's nationalist. So, so that's the first election. Now, because socialists and communism party also win and nationalist parties win, people that go to war with the Dutch until 1940, between 55 and 49 are very poor people and they need to be recognized. To have, at that time there are still a lot of feudals and landlords in Indonesia. It's not being heard, and there are a lot of control over a lot of people by the feudals. So in 1962, Indonesia passed the law of what they call land reform. So any individual not allowed to own land more than 8 hectares. And this is a very big deal for Indonesia because most of like the family in Ubud, for example, own 1% can own 200 hectares. 1% can own 200 hectares. So because of this law being passed, it's equalized a little bit the Gini ratio or the difference between poor and rich. So because it's more people are given land and more. So this is a very important time in Indonesia that from a very feudal society to become a republic that equalize a lot of power between the people.
And those people who owned many more than 8 hectares of land,
They're not happy.
were they clearly not?
Yes.
Were they required to sell it, or was it redistributed? What happened?
The government, if you own more than 8 hectares, that means the rest is belong to government.
Just reconfiscation.
Yes.
Confiscated, yes.
Yeah, the government will take it, but the people can ask for distribution from the government. So people can ask for land to the government, and you pay a little compensation to the government, and you can own land. So that's a turning point in Indonesia that changed the country dramatically. But it's also created a lot of resentment. Yes.
Was that law headed by or proposed by the Communist Party that was previously elected?
Yes, there's also, well, they're the one who proposed it because they're the second winner on the time of the elections. But the Nationalist Party also helped to do it. Yeah. So this is actually a game changer because a lot of feudal lost their power through land. And this is what differentiates Indonesia with Philippines. I don't know if you know, Philippines is the second biggest country that that island nations. So Indonesia is the biggest country on island nations because we have like about 16,000 or 17,000 islands. I think Philippines is about 7,000. So the challenge of Philippines and Indonesia are actually similar. And there is a lot of volcanic and every island, so it's a huge challenge for us. Now, moving forward, supposed to be focused on this.
We'll get to the present election pretty soon, I guess.
Yes, yes. So this is the context of things. Now, because the feudals are angry, and the friction are already happening during the Dutch time. Most of the feudals are actually, on that time, the choice between 1945 and 1949, most of the feudals choose cooperating with the Dutch to get independence. Most of the people are against the Dutch, want to have independence right away. So, but in 1962, the feudal lost again, right? But then in 1965, this is when, I don't know if you know about the film that is being produced, documentaries about a lot of Indonesians died in between 500,000 to 1 million people in 1965. Actually, between 1965 to 1967, about 2 years, the killing happened in Indonesia. Now, this is yes, this is the end of Sukarno era and the beginning of Suharto. Sukarno trying to play. You have to imagine since 1950, the Cold War happened. So in the Cold War, you have to take side. So in 1960, Sukarno don't want to take any side.
Sukarno being the first president.
The first president of Indonesia is Sukarno. He don't want to take any side. He wants to experience his own political process. So that's why there is a fair election and all of those things. But in 1965, that's when the coup happened. This is when Sukarno already gotten ill and probably not going to live a long time. So there are question about succession in Indonesia. So everybody gearing up to be replacing Sukarno. So including Communist Party. But there is other non-party that want to take over also, which is the military. The military, most of the Indonesian military are educated in America, in Western. So most of them are more pro-business, and they're also doing business already on the time. Beside being a military, because government cannot pay them very well, so they smuggle things. So they already in business. Suharto already doing business since before that. So then Suharto was taken over Sukarno in 1967, and there are a lot of killing of communism in 1965 by the people and also by the military, and encouraged by the military. That is more pro-US. Yes?
Does the killings have a direct relation with feudals that have been resenting the...
Yes. So there are, every time big things that happen, is a multiple aspect is happening, right? So it's not just one thing. So there are feudal frictions with the people, the proletarian communist people. So there are military also against the communists. So those things. So then in 1967, when Suharto took over, the first day after he took over the country, he swear by the House of Representatives that he's signing a lot of agreement, giving right concession to a lot of corporate all over the world. Well, Western corporate. So Freeport in Papua, Caltex, whoever it is that drilling oil in Indonesia, they got concession from Suharto. So starting in 1967. So then the era of dictatorship, authoritarianism. So that era is it's sort of really strange time because we have election every 5 years, but we know who's going to win every 5 years. And Suharto is not really chosen directly, but it's indirectly through House Representative. But the member of House Representative is already chosen before that. So people just, whoever that you vote is just ended up. So we have election every 5 years. So during 32 years Suharto in power, we have election every 5 years. But we're not allowed to think outside of that. We cannot form another political party, we cannot, we cannot speak, we cannot gather more than 5 people, we cannot openly protest and say things. So, but as long as you don't do that and you just live. Yes, sir.
At that time, was there in Indonesia some kind of a free press, or was the press totally controlled by the regime?
Very controlled by the regime. You cannot openly criticize government, but then because of that, the media really good in how to say something without saying it. So then we have to be good in reading between the lines. So there is a message that the media mentioned that, but you know what it means. So it's not as open as now, but yeah. So you cannot vulgarly mentioning something names and whatever, but you do. But most of the people are not really. Even in 1991, I formed an NGO for environment. This is when I start interested in politics, because even environment have to be dealing with politics. Because when you approach a village, for example, to do planting of trees, for example, you have to deal with politics. And you have to prove yourself that you're not against Suharto. Just because you want to plant trees. So NGO is very much just like, they don't like it. So that's what happened. Yeah.
Also, in the elections during the 32 years, how many people were planning for the trees? Was there just one person to vote, or?
You mean for the president?
Yeah.
Yes. For the president, it's always it's chosen. There is no direct elections for the executive.
So there are multiple political parties.
Yes. Well, it's only allowed 3 parties.
3 parties.
Yes. So you choose the parties, and you don't choose the people. And then, of course, the majority will win, and it's always Suharto party wins, and always Suharto wins. Because it's also the intelligence services, or anybody that want to be a member of parliament. If you propose by the party, if you didn't pass intelligence approval, you cannot. And then on that time also, if you have a father or you have a family, uncle, whoever that was involved in communism, somehow just because there is a list that was given by CIA, then if you're a member of an organization that affiliated with communism, then you are not. And you have to have that letter from government that you're free from communism. So if your uncle is communist, then you're part of it.
You did not deal only that, because I heard that in Bali, for instance, there were many, how would I say, fight between people who pretended that this one is a communist. Nobody came to check and verify it. They killed the so-called communists.
Yes. Yes, there is. If people are a little bit smart on the time and eloquent how to express themselves, and they usually talk in public and can talk in public, they easily can accuse to be communist. Even that, but what's certain is that a lot of people, Indonesian people, well, any country that is based on agricultural society are very communal. So the idea of communism and socialism are very close in the heart of people. So you join Communist Party just because they're there, and because you're part of the organization of farmers and whatever, but not necessarily that you really understand the ideology of communism, just because that's the way you live. Now, these people that being killed all over Indonesia, they don't even understand why they get killed. And they're killed by their friend too, because their friend is afraid too. If they don't turn in their friend as a communist, they also get killed. So this is what happened. I'm sorry to say, if democratic process are implemented in a third world country where majority of people are not really informed or literate or educated, anything can happen. Because in the past, ideology meant that they have to fight things for life. So this is the background of Indonesia. During Suharto time, everybody's afraid of even saying the word politics because the traumatic of 1967. Nobody want to be in politics. Everybody, the best of the best is not going to be in politics. So that's what's going on for 32 years. And no one of us are willing to speak out for something, because that's considered in the future, if something happened, they're going to point you out as somebody that speak, that talk. That's what happened for 32 years during Suharto time. And even in the village, like for example, we have community Banjar system. Since Suharto want to get all the administration all the way to the village, all the responsibility of Banjar is being stripped. Banjar used to be in charge for their educations, for their cleanliness of the village, for their almost everything is discussed in a communal way in the Banjar. But because of Suharto time, that we're not allowed to do that, and mostly we only in charge for the ceremony and stuff. So we have 32 years of time that people don't really know the rules and regulations of democratic system in the Banjar. So we lost them. That's it.
The time period that I think we could spend another 3 hours
Oh,
talking
okay.
about. But I do want to move ahead
Yes.
to at least to the Reformation, and I want to make sure we get to the heart of the matter.
Yes.
Just one point before you go to the next chapter is that unfortunately today, years after, the new generation, at least in Bali, ignore completely this history of Indonesia.
Is that true?
It not completely, I'm sorry.
They don't know anything.
About?
They don't know about the massacre of the people
Oh.
in 65. It's like the nation has not done its job in terms of education of the younger generation.
Do you think that's true?
Yeah, we have to take it with a grain of salt of people who want to talk about what happened in anytime there is a tragedy happen. People don't really want to openly talk about it because their father probably killed, or their mom, or their uncle, or whatever. They avoid to talk about it. I'm not sure if not knowing, but the perspective of knowing is also different from one people to the others. But I'm sure everybody affected by this. So I'm sure they know, but they just don't choose probably to talk about it. But it is that Indonesian tried, at least in this administration, tried at the beginning of the 2015 to do a reconciliation process, to admit that at least that is happened, and that they are victim of those amount is there. But it was rejected by the military. So, not surprising, but it's, yeah, so,
So let's move that, I mean, if you could just say a word or two about the Reformation in 1999.
yes.
And then we can, I think, jump right ahead.
Yeah.
Last month.
So, Suharto is a mixed figure. So, but what he did toward the end of his reign is like a lot of trouble things and his children and everything. But at the beginning also allowing, because he's the one who controlled the 65 to 67 as a head of military, he's allowing things being killed. Yeah. But since that, he did something, he built a lot of schools, he built a lot of roads. Of course, Indonesia is being helped by Western country after 1967 because we're not pro-left anymore, but we're pro-right. So there are suddenly a lot of money coming in to invest in Indonesia, the concession of the forest and everything. That also the windfall of oil in 1970s. Yeah. So the price of oil is high, so the commodities is high. So the investment in Indonesia to dig Indonesian natural resources. But one thing that I forgot to mention, Indonesia is just like any other country that is very rich in natural resources, have this curse of being a corrupt country. So any country that full of natural resources usually have this curse of being corrupt. Now, at the beginning, Suharto give concession to everyone to stabilize power. So any investment from outside that want to invest in Indonesia, they get to give some percentage to whoever that Suharto choose. So that's how the economy is being run at that time. But he built a lot of schools, he did family planning, he built a lot of roads and harbors to connect Indonesia, and he launched satellites so Indonesia can speak in one language, Indonesian, so the television can be there, and the radio, and whatever propaganda, it's reached the people. So, so Sukarno known is uniting Indonesia by making confrontation to other country, and Suharto known as developing Indonesia from elites into quantity. So when Suharto was in power, at the end of his power, literacy in Indonesia is 85%. And most of Indonesians only have 2 children, so they are successful in family planning. And Indonesia can feed itself because we're self-sufficient in rice. So the basic things is there when Suharto leaves. So when he's leaving before the Reformasi, his kid is growing up, and big part of the people that receiving concession from all of these natural resources in Indonesia. So because of that, there are a lot of resentments from Indonesian people, from Indonesian generals, from Indonesian elites as well. So you already can feel it at the beginning of 90s. So they are talk about succession, but it's still they're actually competing between the technocrat and the military, who's going to take overhand. So by the time of Reformasi, none of his cabinet members, he traveled to Egypt, and none of his cabinet members resigning and doesn't want to be chosen again. And that's how it started. And then he tried to choose other cabinet members, and they refused. So that's when he knows he's in trouble. So then Reformasi happened in 1999, and there is a lack of Indonesian constitutions, and so we reform our constitutions like 4 times to strengthen the legislative and strengthen the judicative, and dividing the power of executive that is very strong during suatu time. So the executive power, which is president, is divided. So toward the province and to the districts. So most of the power of the president now actually divided between the province and also to the regencies. So like, for example, the Kabupaten of Gianyar, where we are in, they basically responsible for the people in their regions almost on everything, except on police, defense, foreign policy, finance, and those things. So those are the reform process in Indonesia.
That level of decentralization, I think, is something that a lot of foreigners living here don't quite understand. But that, I think, is actually a really key.
I think Indonesians don't understand too.
Well, fair enough.
Most of us don't understand.
But that's an interesting. I think that's a good transition point, actually, to start talking about the election itself, because that explains in part why this election was so massive and so complicated, because of that molecular level of decentralization in the country.
Yes.
So I wonder if we can now finally shift to the election itself that was last month, and talk a little bit about the logistics of it, because it was an incredibly complex. I read somewhere that it was in fact the largest direct election that has happened possibly ever on Earth, but certainly it's one of them. And just the sheer amount of stuff that had to be coordinated, the sheer amount of logistics, is staggering. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Yes. So we have to choose member of parliament for districts, which is the Kabupaten, and we have to choose the member of parliament for provincial parliament, which is, for example, Bali, for example. And then we have to choose the parliament for the central government. And then we have to choose president, and then we have to choose also member of the Senate. So
You got all that?
yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think it's 5 differences. But yeah, as you know that Indonesia is very big, and among the 16,000 islands, I think is about 6,000 is occupied. So then we also separated a lot by a mountain and hill. So the logistic of this election is huge. But this is not the first time that we done election. We've done it already many times. Every year there is election happen choosing the executive, for example, from 100 different districts. So every year's 100 to 200 election happen, gearing up into this process. Now, part of the Indonesian major plan on reforming the democratic process is to have election that is in one, at the end of the reform, that we choose all of them in one time. So not just the district leaders, but the governor, but also president, everything all in one time. That's part of the reform. So it's not, it's the decision that made it toward the beginning of the roadmap of the democratic process. Because election is very expensive to make people come and choose, and doing all of those things are very expensive. So they're trying to make it like a 5-year event. And so they can finance the political party in the future. So there is no campaign finance that come from outside, which is cost a lot of corruption.
Is that really the reason that it's all condensed into one day?
Yes.
Just because of money, basically?
Not just money, but I think people, every time there is election and campaign, there is a lot of social upheaval. And the cost of it also is very high.
As we're seeing right this second.
As we see now. And it's also breaking countries apart. And they're trying to make election as a regular thing, as something that it shouldn't be a big deal. Yeah. So they're trying to do that. Yes, that's part of their plan. And besides also money, because it's not cheap to have election every year. So, but it's also they want to spend the money more on political party because a lot of political party, the reason why they're corrupt is because for campaign finance. So a lot of them get that problem because of the campaign finance, because they have to give money to the political parties.
Now, one of the news items that perhaps a lot of you saw about this election, which is just kind of fascinating to see, is that there's actually a lot of deaths that have been associated with the ballot counting process. It's very hard for someone like me to understand how something like that comes about. Could you explain your take on how that has happened?
Yes. We don't really know yet because the study needs to be done about these things, and there should be investigation really happen, particularly why this is happening. But apparently that also happen every election in Indonesia. So every district election there is also people die afterward. And what I know 5 years ago, this is I don't know this 5 years ago, but I know this now because people discuss about it. The media reported that in 2014 is about 175 people died after election.
And we're not talking about people dying in riots or in demonstrations.
No.
We're talking about people who are counting ballots.
Exactly. Yes. So we all can guess what really happened, but I don't think this is one answer. If it's happened also in the past, it's something might happen election related. Most of these people died. It's not election committee, it's a volunteers that volunteering for election. So usually people that chosen in the community, like in the Bangar, for example, we choose anybody that we respect in the community, usually an older person.
I think it's important to point out that there are many thousands of ballot locations right, throughout the country, and
Yes.
they're very local.
Yes. So 813,000 ballots placed.
Just locations where people can vote.
Yes, and each of them serving about 200 to 300 people. It's not a lot. So, but then this is the first time that the election happened, also including the parliament and the president at one time. So, but the background of the situation is that 5 years ago, the competing parties are also in dispute, similar to what happened now. But the effect of that is not as big as now. 5 years ago, we don't have, not everyone in Indonesia have a smartphone. The digitalization is not.
I want to make sure we don't get off the subject though, because
Yes.
you were talking about the people who get selected by those very small communities
Yes.
to be the people who are the ballot counters.
Right.
And who gets selected, I think, has something to do with how we end up with so many deaths on our
Yes, so I'm getting there because I think a lot of these people died is not directly from exhaustion or but it's indirectly from the sickness that they have previously. At least the majority that they research in Jakarta, that's what happened.
So, for example, someone who might be picked as a volunteer for this might be a respected elder in a community, or
Yes.
someone who's already got some kind of infirmity.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So the difference between 5 years ago and now is the election it's much more tense this time, and much more people becoming involved because of the digitalization. There are much more pressure towards the election. The one that's running the election this time, not the committee of election, but the volunteers. There's so much pressure against them, so they get more stress. That's so far that we know, because that's what happened. Well, not so much in Bali, but there are so much even threat happened to the people that just responsible to just watch and contact the ballots.
So with representatives of both parties plus
Yes.
officials from the election commission all sort of breathing down your neck.
Yeah, well, this is also, we know that the election commission is giving freedom for people to do their job. It's up to them to decide when the ballot content happen. So if they think it should happen right away, then they should do it right away. If that's need to be happen after they take a rest, because of the excitement of this election now, most of the witness from the political party and other members of presidential witness, that they're forcing these people to work, not only preparing the ballots, but it's also counting afterward until the next day. So that's also they said part of the problem.
So let's now, was there a question?
It seems that this election, the battle was not only between the political parties, but also between the moderate religious Muslims and the more fundamentalist Muslims.
Yes, that's true.
So this actually, I want to piggyback on that because the question that the topic I want to get onto now is, let's talk about the two major characters. Prabowo, Jokowi, the two presidential candidates, who I think both represent sort of these two sides, in a way represent these two sides that you're talking about. So let's start with Jokowi, because he may be a more familiar figure. Who is Jokowi and what's his role?
Yeah, Ariawan is Prabowo. Jokowi, he's come from a humble background. He used to live on the side of the river, and he gone through a lot. But then he becoming like a business, small business furniture person, that making furniture in Solo. And then he decided to run for politics. Then he went. Then he is very successful in transforming Solo into one of the cities that very livable and the people support him. So in the second election in Solo, he won 70% of the vote, and because he was very successful. So then he ran. He's not member of any political party. He doesn't have any party, but he was chosen by PDIP to run for governor of Jakarta. And then 2 years he was there. He's winning the heart of the people in Jakarta because that's the first time Jakarta was transformed into much more friendlier city for the poor. So he was well liked by the poor because he's introducing the health system, the education system, and directly subsidizing, eradicating poverty in Jakarta, Islam of Jakarta, and cleaning Jakarta, also becoming much more famous. So then he was, because he was so popular, then people proposed him to be a candidate for the presidency. So that's why he won in 2014. That's his first election that he won.
And of course, we just learned that he won in 2019.
That's, if the Constitutional Court is deciding that he won, then he will win, yes.
And can you tell us just a little bit about what his platform is, what his skills are as a politician?
Well, he learned being a small businessman, but he was frustrated with the bureaucrats. So he wanted to change that, and he wanted to reform bureaucratic process in Solo. He is very successful in doing that, and Solo becoming a very easy for people to come. Like used to be that when people come and make ID card or license for something, and it takes like forever to do it. And when he come and he cut the process into only 1 hour. So he was successful cutting the corruption. He was successful providing a very affordable basic needs for the people. Yes. So because of his experience, then his experience to implementing things in Indonesia that is being planned for a long time, but is being, I think, hurdled by corruptions. So what he did in the last 5 years is that he break the wheel of economic in Indonesia, basically. From the economic of commodities, the rent-seeking economic, when people get percentage on somebody else's doing something, to economic of productions. Now, because of this, he not really well liked by the elites, because the elite is benefiting from this, and the bureaucrat also benefiting from this, and usually the elites is bribing the conservative or religious people to stay quiet. And because of this, then he broke all the wheels. So he not really well liked by the conservative. So now Prabowo, in the other hand, is part of the elites from the beginning. He's come from the feudal family in Solo, also is from Solo. So, and also is...
Solo, by the way, if you don't know, is a city in Java, also known as Surakarta, which is known as a particularly, if I'm not mistaken, is known as a particularly conservative city, even within conservative areas.
Sort of mix, yes.
Mixed.
Yes. But some of the basic of school of terrorism is from there too. So, it's called Nguruki. Nguruki is the place where a lot of terrorists come from. Now, so Prabowo, it's come from the elites.
And he also has a connection with Suharto, in fact.
Yes, his son-in-law of Suharto. His father, Prabowo's father is actually rebelling against Sukarno in 1957. So backed by the US to do a coup towards Sukarno. And he's educated, he's an economist and educated at Harvard, Prabowo's father. And then when Suharto is in power, of course, he's becoming one of the economic kings. Because of that, then Prabowo came to Indonesia. Before they were overseas, and most of his studies is actually overseas. So he joined the military and becoming one of the most controversial general. So he joined special forces, and he wanted to kill a lot of Indonesian soldiers and East Timorese fighters. And also in Papua is doing the same thing. So he's rocketed his career is because he's the son-in-law of Suharto, and also killing a lot of people there to get his careers, because he has to get medals and things like that to be able to forward his career. Yes. So during this election, or past election also, in a way, he's broke the ethical things in Indonesia that is not, this thing called Sara Indonesia. You should use ethnics, religions, or differences into politics.
You should not.
You should not. Because that's the Indonesian foundation is called Pancasila, and we shouldn't use those identity politics. So he's one of the first one using this. So during this digitalization time, then there are a lot of fake news, and that not directly using it, but trapping a lot of people through awakening their lizard brain, that they threaten their identity as a Muslim, and so this politics is becoming.
It seems like that was one of the things that was most often spoken about Prabowo, is that, and so to get back to research, so I didn't forget, is that his appeal was really to Islam and to religion in a way, and to race to some degree, to sort of anti-Chinese sentiments. That's what we hear about most with regard to Prabowo.
Yeah, so when you're a political candidate that you didn't have record of proving that you've been doing something that's successful before, you don't have any choice of choosing identity is your political identity is your way of winning. So because Prabowo's record, like even he got fired from military in 1999 because he's the one creating this riot in 1998 after Suharto going down. So he got fired from the military because of that, because he made 13 people disappear, like students and things like that. So then when you don't have a record of successful record on running something, or even his own company is not very good, then he choose this way to do it. He's a macho, right-wing, conservative, alarmist candidate, which is very successful with that. Yes.
45% of the vote.
Yeah, 34. Yeah.
And
So, yeah.
It's interesting to me though because we often associate Prabowo with especially right-wing Islam, and we don't think of Jokowi that way. And yet, Jokowi's running mate, Maruf Amin,
Yes.
is the head of one of the major Islamic organizations in the
Yes.
country. Can you talk about that decision, because that was a really interesting
Okay.
turn.
So when you talk about Islam in Indonesia, there are many factions of Islam. So the biggest Islam in Indonesia is two organizations, which is Muhammadiyah and NU. The NU Islam is the NU that part of the pact of forming the country.
NU, which stands for
Nahdlatul Ulama. So they're the one who actually helped to form the country. They're the one who helped also to make the constitutions, and they're also the one fight with the Dutch. They're the one also to adopt this country as it is. So they want Islam in Indonesia as an Indonesian Islam, not an Arabic Islam. So, because they have a traditional way of doing something which is nothing to do with Arabic Islam. So, they call it Islam Nusantara. Now, they've been very quiet, and they're the largest one, and Muhammadiyah also very quiet. But recently they fought back against all of this outside influence Islam, which is sort of, it's called Hizbut Tahrir Indonesia, and also the Adil Baisis. This is the Ikhwanul Muslimin, which is the Brotherhood Muslim, which is, their belief is making a country into Khilafah, which is a Muslim caliphate.
Caliphate, yeah.
Yeah, caliphate. It's a network all over the country.
And that's seen as a Saudi influence, I think.
In the past, there's now Saudi is turning their backs into them, and they're even jailing and killing a lot of ulamas now. So Saudi is switching now. So they don't have any boss anymore in Saudi Arabia, so there is no finance from them. So this is what Prabowo used, to use this kind of Muslim and track, and they gaining ground because of the digitalization. So a lot of Indonesian people are really afraid that their identity as a Muslim is being tracked. The identity of their Muslimness is being tracked because this fake news and hoax and things.
And this is what Prabowo was playing on.
This is what they make. Yes, it's actually, this is not just Indonesia, right? It's all over the world happening, and it's happened in America. So it's happened in Britain, happened in India, and happened also in Brazil. So a lot, Australia also. So it's not unique to Indonesia that we all facing the same problem of the digitalization bringing a lot of good things to us, but it's also confronting something to us that we don't even know how to do.
And in fact, I think that's a really good transition to the one last topic I want to cover before I open up for questions. So if there's something that you've been hanging on to that you want to ask about, we'll pass the mic in a second. But one more subject. So this notion of digitalization and hoaxes is really relevant to everyone in this room right now, because Some of you may have noticed that your WhatsApp and Facebook aren't working very well recently. And that relates directly to what's going on in Jakarta, if I'm not mistaken, in response to the official declaration of victory by the election commission that Jokowi was indeed the winner. So can you talk about why is my WhatsApp not working?
Yeah, in the last, I think, just last hour, they opened it up again. Is that right? Yes. So, but it was set up since the 22nd, I guess, in 22. This is a series of things going on in Indonesia. It's actually a playbook of election now for the right wing to do. Is first, whatever it is questioning the election commission. Whatever it is, the result is not going to be. They're not going to.
If they lost.
If they lost. If they win, they're going to accept it. They said this from the start, and that's happening in the United States also, and happening in a lot of places. So, and then they also don't want to. They want to use the mass power. So they keep talking. They keep saying that they're being cheated all of this time. Before even election happen, it's going to be cheated. We got cheated. We got cheated. And all of this, all the time, until their own voters that really believe in it. Even if we have this 20 years of election already, that is happening peacefully, then everybody accepting the result. Just this time election is very effective to be. So then this is gearing up toward even that the, what is this, the poll, statistical people, the data polls? Yeah, the pollsters, yes.
Yeah.
The surveys, Indonesian survey, there are about 10 of them, very respected in the country and recognized. They have an organization for it, and they are respected also by overseas because they also work on other statistical things. The spread of the vote was, before the election was, 1 month before that is 20%. So president's incumbent is 20% different spread with the. So this is gearing up to that, and they still don't want to accept that they are lost. So they want to encourage people to do demonstrations. So apparently, a few days before that,